Hello, it's the Liverpool Echoes Blood Red podcast. I'm Matt Addison with Ian Doyle, Rimmer and Theo Squires, all with me for today's show. Absolutely loads of bits for us to get through. We'll take a look at Villarreal and Newcastle United, but we'll have to start with the news that Jurgen Klopp has extended his contract at Anfield for a further 2 years. Dory, we did a live show last night with Sean Bradbury and Tom Cavilla, and so I don't want to go over the same sort of ground as we did then. People can go and listen to that if they didn't watch it or listen to it. But we did hear from Jurgen Klopp this morning in his press conference. Of course, he was asked about this. It was pretty interesting, I thought, around the contract extension and that kind of situation. He didn't really directly sort of answer around what the impact might be on Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane and a few of the other players who have got contract situations to be resolved as well. But I suppose fundamentally, even though he might not say it, it probably isn't going to do them any harm.
No, well, you'd like to think it wouldn't. Yeah, it was all about, to be honest, it was all about something that Sean picked up on yesterday where Mike Gordon had spoken, hadn't he? And he mentioned about, Jurgen Klopp signing his contract has given them stability and continuity. And that can help with several things, including renewals. And that's obviously contract renewals. And that will be something that, Liverpool will hope can help in terms of, trying to persuade Mohamed Salah to sign a new deal and any other player, possibly Sadio Mane. We don't actually know that for sure, but it would be surprised if they didn't ask him to sign a new contract, given the way he's been playing lately. And there's others, isn't there? Joel Matip, Roberto Firmino, Naby Keita, going on to Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, even as far as James Milner. This summer we know that Jurgen Klopp would quite like him to sign a new deal. But ultimately, I think that'll be up to James Milner himself whether he wants to go and play football. But Salah's the main one. That's the one that everybody's been talking about for months, and it can only help, can't it? Whether or not it makes ultimately the difference. Jurgen Klopp said there's far more things to do than that. He doesn't expect him staying to be decisive, but in any case, he would have been there for 2 more years anyway. So, I actually don't think it'll make that much difference in that respect. Where, as we touched on yesterday, where it could make a difference is actually the signing of players. I think Jurgen Klopp did mention that in passing in his press conference today. He said it will have some kind of impact. He'd like to think it'd have some kind of impact on transfers because players are coming in, know who's meant to be there, and they know he's going to be there. They know that the backroom staff are going to be there, and they've built this body of work over the last 3 or 4 years that's very successful with his team. They've already got most of the core of the squad on long-term contracts, so you would expect that should be fine. But in terms of Mohamed Salah's contract, yes, we're going to have to wait and see, because I don't necessarily think Jurgen Klopp signing his contract extension is going to make any difference to what Salah does.
In terms of the sort of bigger picture, Joe, Jurgen Klopp spoke about the kind of vision that he has for his future at Liverpool, what he still wants to achieve. And I suppose it was just exciting stuff. We kind of knew it anyway, of course, but it's always good to kind of hear it from the man himself.
Yeah, do you know, I thought his press conference today, for anyone who hasn't seen it, recommend going and watches it, was probably one of the best ones he's taken for a long time. He seems so upbeat, he seems so positive. It was probably one of the best examples of the way Klopp can sort of galvanise since the first press conference he ever did at Anfield when he joined the club. I thought that little section that Dory's written a story on, talking about his vision for the club, was outstanding. And more about the feeling and the emotion around the club, and it just underlines again why Klopp is such a good manager for Liverpool, because he buys into the emotion. He knows that that's what the club is about, and he knows how to harness it and make it probably Liverpool's best weapon. So I thought it was really good, really fascinating to listen to, and he just seems in a really good place at the moment. And you know what? He's a manager that manages on emotions. It wouldn't surprise me if this contract is signed on emotions at the moment. He seems to be very happy. He seems to be enjoying his time at the club. And also, I think the timing of it wouldn't surprise me if Klopp's had that in the back of his mind. As Liverpool go back and go into, a few key games remaining, to keep the momentum going into those games. It's a real boost. I think, next time Liverpool are at Anfield, it'll be bouncing, and, that I'm so glad song will be echoing around. So yeah, I mean, it was a really good press conference. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I'd recommend going to watch it, because it was just Klopp on really good form. And yeah, from everything he says, I think Liverpool have got a bright future under him.
Yeah, absolutely. After you've finished watching this, you can go, of course, and watch that on the Blood Red YouTube channel. We'll all be up there for you, and like Joe says, well worth having a check out of that. Theo, what did you make of the press conference? Was it one you enjoyed as well?
Yeah, it's the first time I think for a good while that we've managed to get 3 or 4 pieces out of it. It's like, oh, that's a line, that's a line. He just said so many interesting things, and it's not just the basics of injury news. It's that vision for the future, the lines on Salah and Mane, and even the bits when he's talking about Newcastle, he's actually talking about the game. You can tell he's in a very positive place at the moment, and he said that as much when he's talking about his family and his coaching team. They've obviously enjoying this season so much, and who can blame them on the verge of potentially winning everything. And like, as Joe's there, you said, you can see it giving them that little boost. It's very timely. Like, you make comparisons to when Liverpool last played Newcastle between 2 Champions League semi-final legs. And that was a tough game when they needed a late Divock Origi winner. Newcastle obviously in a much stronger position now than they were then. And it's timely to have that boost to go, oh, your manager's staying put now. And then while it might not have a direct impact on a Salah or Mane in terms of them staying put, it means he can go more likely to go into bat for them to make sure that they stay at the club, because it is his Liverpool now for the next 4 years, as opposed to being passing on the baton to a successor. He's got a real invested interest now in keeping these players at the club. And you can tell he's someone who's just looking forward to the next 4 years, but also this next month, because we already know he's a Liverpool legend. His name's in the record books. He's won these biggest honours. Well, he could become one of the greatest managers ever in Liverpool's history just by going and achieving something that's never been done before. He's already one of the greatest ever, but he's on the verge of immortality. And it's just giving everyone that boost at the right time when they're already in a good place, having signed Luis Diaz in January and just gone from strength to strength. It's another boost for him. And I keep saying boost. I need to get a different word here going through for the next few weeks.
Yeah, I suppose that's it, isn't it, though? It's obviously a longer term thing, but in the short term as well, it can help, as Theo uses the boost there. There is going to be a tangible effect in the short term as well.
You'd like to hope there's a boost, because, you know, if Liverpool can get that boost of an extra 1%, I can't use boost anymore, sorry. Yeah, I don't necessarily. I mean, Klopp, to be fair, said that he didn't sign his new deal because this season's going well and last season was terrible. I think he sees a bit more to it than that. Although, as we mentioned, you know, in the last podcast, there has been a definite change in his enthusiasm for the job and his energy. It was James Milner who actually first mentioned it out in public back in, I think it was February, where he was talking about, he saw that Klopp had lost a little bit of his energy last season, but that was not just because of the football and obviously the injuries and everything that happened last season, but just the general having to cope with everything that was going on last year, just in general away from football, coronavirus. Jurgen Klopp mentioned this today in that very long answer when he was asked about what the message was that sends out to Liverpool's rivals that he signed a new long-term deal. But he ended up just opening up on his vision, as Joe said. We did a piece on that, so that was interesting. I think it's not going to harm Liverpool, is it, over these next couple of games? The man who's kind of guided them has said, look, I'm so convinced by the way things are going here and the way that you players, this team, this coaching staff, these supporters, that we can do even better over the next few years. Because what did he say? We're only just getting started, which was interesting given the fact he's been there for 6 and a bit years. That's the kind of thing that certainly the supporters want to hear. That's the kind of thing the players want to hear. That's the kind of thing that the owners want to hear. There's never been any sense of resting on the laurels at Liverpool. And as we mentioned, in the previous podcast, there is that kind of sense that he could be building this dynasty that not so much rivals, Ferguson and Wenger in terms of longevity and length of time, but that it's been transformative for a club that previously has been at the top, and that's where Liverpool are again. And Jurgen Klopp seems to think that that's somewhere that they can stay, because he feels as though even though they're still going for the quadruple with less than a month to go of the season, he still thinks that they can get even better.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we move on, Joe, it's of course not just Jurgen Klopp with the extended contract, Pep Lijnders and his other sort of coaching staff there as well. We probably shouldn't forget the work that they've done as well, a big part of this project under Klopp.
Yeah, and he alluded today, didn't he, that their vision for the future was another reason why he wanted to stay put and be a part of it. So, they're obviously very, very important, and I think they all buy into his energetic ways. It's not just for Liverpool, isn't it? I think their rivals will be looking at yesterday's news and will be a bit crestfallen, because let's face it, as a Liverpool fan, you're sort of waiting for Alex Ferguson to leave United, and look at the effect that had. You look at Man City and think, well, I think the best chance of Man City slipping away out of contention for major honours will be when Pep Guardiola leaves. And I'm sure Liverpool's rivals will be thinking, well, 2 more years of Klopp, we've got to put up with him for 2 more years. But after that, Liverpool aren't going to find a manager as good as him, and they're probably not. So, for him to extend his contract, will be a blow to them, won't it? So I think it's massive news for Liverpool. It's great at this time of the season, and it's the best signing I think Liverpool could possibly make. We've talked a lot about Salah's contract. We've talked a lot about Mane's, but Klopp's comes ahead of all of them in terms of priorities for me. And it's just, what's that word you used, Theo? It's just such a boost.
It absolutely is. Exciting times for Liverpool. Hopefully those continue over the next few weeks or so. A big week ahead again, Theo. Obviously, Newcastle to come first, Villarreal after that. The first leg we saw earlier this week. And I suppose the thing that kind of struck me really was not just in the Villarreal game, but we've seen it against Everton now as well. The sort of early part of Jurgen Klopp's reign at Liverpool, a setup like that was designed and it worked in stopping them. Whereas, these days you can line up in a low block, but Liverpool will find a way.
Yeah, that's why they're one of the very best teams around. They always seem to find a way, and they haven't really been at their very best or had to be at their very best for a while now, but they just keep knocking at the door and find a way to get through teams and get the goals. And Thiago's been crucial to that, hasn't it? We're finally seeing why Jurgen Klopp was so keen to bring him in, what he could bring to the team. His passing accuracy recently has just been out of this world. I think Doyley's mentioned it in a couple of pieces. It might have been his snap analysis in midweek, and you just all clicking together nicely. And Villarreal, it's a strange game because it wasn't a European Cup semi-final at Anfield compared to ones before. There was the atmosphere there when Liverpool were leading, but it felt like you were just playing this mid-table team that the Villarreal are in Spain, and you just assumed at some point, Liverpool will get the goals. Yeah, they'll get the job done, and they'll be going to Spain with a nice enough lead to defend. And then going for the second leg, or Villarreal, this counter-attacking team, they've got to go there and attack and get goals, and the fans have really got to unsettle Liverpool, and they've got to find a way to score 3. And you don't want to jinx anything, but that seems a big ask for any side, never mind a team that aren't even one of the best in the country, never mind in European football. That highlights the transformation that Jurgen Klopp has done at Liverpool and what we'd like to see for the next 4 years. But it's nothing new that he's transformed this team. You look at that side that he took over. There are still players at the club now who he's transformed into world-class players like Henderson or Roberto Firmino, but he's brought so many others in and transformed them as well. And he's taken a team that were missing out on Europe in that first season, losing that Europa League final, so missed out on Champions League as well, to get into a Champions League final, to winning one, to winning the Premier League, and now being on the verge of potentially winning everything. This is potentially the start of a dynasty. That's what you expect to see.
Yeah, Theo mentions Thiago there, Doyle. It's 96% passing accuracy for Everton, 98 for Manchester United, 96 for Villarreal in a Champions League semi-final. He's just one of the most informed players for Liverpool at the moment. And I suppose the only thing you've got to do is keep your fingers crossed he stays fit for the next month.
Well, those numbers suggest he's in regression now, so it may be a good time to strike while the iron's hot and get rid of him in the summer, because he's clearly going backwards. I mean, one of the interesting things about Thiago is that somebody else noticed this, is that the problem you have with these pass accuracy statistics a lot of the time is they tend to be centre backs because they're passing it sideways or not very far, basically. But with Thiago, the way he's getting the ball, he's always looking to move Liverpool forward. He's always looking to, get the opposition to think about what they're doing. A lot of his passes are actually making sure that Liverpool move into positions where, for example, Villarreal didn't want them in certain areas, and that's where, thanks to Thiago, they kept on going, which is why I think Klopp mentioned it after the game. He said that we were able to move them into places where they didn't want to go. That was part of their game plan. And I think it was Capuy, or it was one of their players who spoke afterwards, and he said, look, we had a game plan, it just didn't work because we couldn't make it work because of the way Liverpool played. Thiago's key to that, as Theo said. These kind of, you said low block, whereas I just say defensive teams because I'm old school. Just put everybody on the back. There's nothing wrong with that. Everton did it on Sunday, and they nearly, I wouldn't say get away with it, but that was exactly the way they should have played. And that's exactly what they did. And Villarreal have got through to the semi-finals of the Champions League playing exactly that way. Why on earth would they do anything different when they're coming up against a team that's renowned for their attacking play? So Liverpool have shown that kind of progress, how they've, as Theo said, have achieved, of just being able to get around these teams a lot easier. Because they've got a player like Thiago. That's exactly the reason why he was bought. You go back and have a look at what Klopp said when he brought him in. He said this is entirely the reason. And we've done Thiago quite a lot over the past 12 months. But the reality is, it's like a little bit like Keita. It's been ages since you would write a piece saying, is he the right person for Liverpool? Because that's not the question anymore. It's just the question is, can he keep those levels as often as possible and give Liverpool as much as, make as much of a difference as he has been doing in the last couple of weeks? And there's a reason why he's won, is it 29 major trophies, something like that? He's won a lot of, maybe it's not 29, actually could be. He's won a lot of stuff in his career, but there's a reason for that. It's because he's the person who comes good at the business end of the season. For the big games. I mean, United at home, City in an FA Cup semi-final at Wembley, United at home, Everton at home, Villarreal in a semi-final of a Champions League. And even I thought City away in the 2-2. Liverpool's best player was probably Thiago in almost all of those games. If not the best player, then certainly one of the best 2 or 3. That's why he's there. But yeah, I'm a bit worried about the pass accuracy, because if he dropped to like 94 at Newcastle if he's playing, I think that there'd be a genuine cause for concern.
He was excellent as well, actually, just to build on your point there, as Liverpool got into the Champions League at the back end of last season. The last sort of 8 to 10 games there was superb.
The thing about that is that he said, I remember he did an interview at the end of the season where he said that we had to play a different way to get through, because he'd have joined a team that you thought were going to be playing the way that they are now, because they've got all of the players, not all of the players available. I mean, they have at the moment, but most of the players available. They wouldn't have the kind of injuries that they had last season, which meant they had to play a very different way. They didn't play a high line last season, did they? They couldn't when they had Nat Phillips and Reece Williams there, which meant everybody had to fall backwards, which meant he was having to play a different kind of football. Now he's playing in a team that's playing exactly the kind of way that he knows, the kind of way that he'll have watched Liverpool before he joined. And that's why he's become so successful, because, as Klopp said, I can't remember whether it was the days just all merged into one. It may have been this press conference or the last one. He said it's about finding players who fit the system, and he fits the system that Liverpool are playing now, which is why Thiago is prospering a lot more now and the tail end of last season than he did when he first started.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the result, Joe, in that game, obviously lots of games still to come for Liverpool. They're going to have to take that second leg seriously, but it can only be a good thing that they've got that advantage. They're not going to take the foot off the gas, obviously, next week, but with so many games to come, you do have to rotate a little bit. You've got that sort of opportunity to do so to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I expect them to make changes. I think if Firmino's back, he might play in that one. But yeah, it was just so professional from Liverpool. And like Doyle said, the last 2 games have come up against teams that have played in a certain manner. And I think what is hugely impressive is that Liverpool have just got the thing about them where they're almost inevitable, aren't they? They just keep going and keep going. And I think a couple of the Villarreal players and Emery himself spoke afterwards about how, they had that game plan, but Liverpool just weigh it down, and they did, and all right, they were slightly fortuitous with the first goal, but it comes because they have wave after wave after wave of attack, doesn't it? And I think, just to sort of touch back on the Everton game, there's this again, this massive myth for me that the big teams get favoured in penalty decisions, and I just think it's because big teams constantly attack because they have better players and they have more of the ball. And Liverpool had so much of the possession against Everton and then against Villarreal that it's inevitable that you will get bits of luck, you will get refereeing decisions, you will get more opportunities to win penalties, to win free kicks, to win to score goals, whether they're lucky. I always remember back at Chelsea when they used to score so many deflected goals, didn't they? Whether it was Lampard or Joe Cole. I think every goal Joe Cole ever scored for Chelsea in that period was deflected, and it was just because they just wore teams down and they had that many shots and that much possession around the area that they get a bit of luck. So, the way Liverpool are playing at the moment, they're just inevitable. They just keep coming and keep coming, and going to Villarreal, I think it's going to be difficult. But in the famous last words of maybe Barcelona, I just can't see Liverpool not scoring there. So I think think they will be able to manage that tide, make some changes and get through. And they'll need to, because I think Newcastle is going to take a lot out of them. And I think tomorrow will be, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I think it'll be very difficult tomorrow. So I think Liverpool are going to have to be at their best, and they'll expend a lot of energy.
Yeah, we'll move on to Newcastle now. I think obviously the big game on Saturday lunchtime, and Theo, a lot of the talk around the sort of 12:30 kickoff. Jurgen Klopp didn't want it. There was that obvious request to play the game a little bit later. But in some ways, I wonder if on this occasion it might benefit Liverpool slightly. Obviously, the atmosphere at St James's Park being one element, but also the fact that they play before Manchester City rather than afterwards.
Potentially, but then you look at Liverpool, and yeah, they have the grumbles about the kickoff time, but they should be good enough to get the job done anyway. We know what the atmosphere would be like at Anfield if it's a 12:30 kickoff. It's usually a little bit subdued, so you'd hope it'd have that same knock-on effect. And we know the size of Liverpool's squad now, so Jurgen Klopp could rotate and make 4 or 5 changes if he really wanted to, and name a strong enough side. It's just annoying with the Premier League that they wouldn't make this change, that it was far easier for him to sit back and do nothing when Eddie Howe came out, and he didn't have any issues if it had been changed or if it was going ahead now. When you look at Scotland, well, Rangers asked for their game last weekend, I think, to be moved, and Scottish League were happy to move that because they want them to go and do well in Europe because it'll boost their coefficients ranking. Well, Premier League don't need to worry about that because they're always going to have 4 teams qualifying for the Champions League group stages with Liverpool and City around. But it just have a bit of thought here. Look after your team so they can have the best chance of reaching Champions League finals. Like if we could be looking at a second All-English Champions League final in a row, you think they'd want to aid that. But then Liverpool good enough with the depth and they've got on the books to be able to beat Newcastle, to beat Villarreal, to manage these sorts of games. It's quite telling that Klopp didn't have any grumbles about it today, did he? He's like, well, this is the kickoff time. They've rejected it. We've just got to move on now. We've got to just go and do the job that's in front of us. I've signed my contract. The players are available, and let's see what we can do. Like I said earlier, he compared it to that Newcastle 3-2 game earlier a few years ago. But while you're expecting another tough game, let's not forget Newcastle are in a really good place at the moment. You forget how poorly they started the season. Like, how long ago does it now seem Steve Bruce was Newcastle manager? I think they won, one game in those first 16 games. Now they've only lost 4 times since they last played Liverpool in December. But Liverpool are in a league of their own as well. So it doesn't matter how good Newcastle are, and you'd like to think they'll be pushing for Europe in a few years. Liverpool are just too good for most teams at this moment.
Yeah, you'd imagine Liverpool will be too good, Doyle, but they have been on a decent run recently. Eddie Howe seemingly doing a decent job, obviously helped by the fact they spent the best part of £100 million in January, but it's not going to be an easy game, is it, for Liverpool?
Did they spend £100 million in January?
They spent 92 or something, didn't they, I think?
I must have been asleep. I
Did
don't know.
They signed the midfielder.
They spent 40 on Bruno Guimaraes, and I think
Trippier's out
Chris Wood
now.
Chris Wood and Trippier were about 20-25
That's right,
each,
yeah.
weren't they?
Joe's a massive fan of Eddie Howe. Well, or Eddie Howe's head. I think that's fair to say, aren't you? Yeah.
Eddie Howe's head, as portrayed by David Squires.
That's it, yeah. You feel as though it's kind of representative of Howe's features.
It's just brilliant.
Don't dominate his entire skull, shall we say.
Can someone flash that up on the screen now? Can we not do that? Come on, Patrick, our producer.
Would it be copyright issues? I don't know. We could get Theo to draw it as well, like as an imitation. He's a good artist, or something like that. Anyway, what was the question? Oh, Newcastle. Yeah, Newcastle. I think this is the game. If Liverpool don't win the league, it'll be by dropping points. It'll be this one. I think this is the hardest game they got left. I know people look at Tottenham, but Tottenham are just, I'm never going to like say bad things about Tottenham, even though they have some very good players. But they've kind of fallen away a little bit. They seem to be unable to score, Tottenham, but we'll deal with that next week. Newcastle is different because I know Klopp referenced that 2019 game. He couldn't quite understand why they were absolutely desperate for Liverpool not to win the league, but that's just the way that it is. And I think, 12 is probably in terms of atmosphere better for Liverpool than a half or 7:45, wasn't it, that they wanted. I don't think it's going to make that much difference. I think Newcastle, they've kind of got this kind of, I was going to say weird thing going on up there, but I think they seem to be living in a different world in the sense of how they're regarding, I don't want to go down this whole rabbit hole of their ownership, but because they are winning and signing players and they've had so long of Mike Ashley just doing absolutely nothing and just, the Real Madrid approach to ownership, in the sense that Real Madrid just tried to do the least amount possible to try and get through and seem to keep them getting away with it. And I think Newcastle have done that for a bit too long for Newcastle fans' liking. So you can't blame them for being made up. But I think the way that everybody else views their club is different to how it is at the moment. I also think that this game is going to be difficult because, as Theo said, they've done really well since January. I think only Liverpool have taken more points than Newcastle since the turn of the year, or since the some date. Although they have played a few more games. And I'm pretty sure in saying they've been nicking quite a lot of games, 1-0, 2-1. They beat Palace 1-0. They came from behind to beat Leicester 2-1. And the crowd played a part in that. So for me, this is Liverpool's most difficult game. And the fact that it's the one game where this is the one game where rotations, they're probably going to have to rotate quite a lot of players. I know that they're 2-0 up in that first game in Spain, but as Joe suggested, that second leg isn't going to be straightforward at all. And I think Liverpool cannot afford to lose this game. A draw isn't the worst result in the world for me, because then they've still got a little bit of control, because then if City lose one game, Liverpool will be ahead on goal difference. So there's always that, and that could take them through to the last game of the season. But if they get beat, City beat Leeds 4 points, that's it. So this is a massive game for me, and I think that it will be Liverpool's toughest one, and it will be probably the biggest test they're going to have for the rest of the season of the strength of their squad.
The interesting thing with that as well is that I'm pretty sure Manchester City play Newcastle next week, don't they? I know that's away from home, isn't it? But
isn't it? Yeah, and I think the Newcastle are still not great away from home, to be honest.
Yeah, I suppose you can argue it both ways as well. The fact that they've not really got a great deal to play for, that can sort of take the pressure off, or it could sort of be one where they're on the beach a little bit. But Joe, what are you expecting from that game?
I think
Newcastle could still make Europe. They're not out of it yet.
I'd be very surprised if they made Europe, I'll be honest.
United are rubbish. West Ham are focusing on Europa League. Wolves are just on beach mode. They could sneak 7th.
It's not so much. I think that they'll want to finish as high as possible, won't they? Just because they want to show that they're on an upward curve, and if they're signing players in the summer, which we know that they're going to go out aggressively to do. I think Theo's got a point. I don't think they're going to go for Europe, but I certainly think they'll want to finish as high as possible. To be perfectly honest, I thought they were gone in the back end of last year. They were in such bad form, and to be fair to Eddie Howe, he's done a really good job there, hasn't he? I think it's going to be. Agree with Doyle. I think it's one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult fixture left. I think it'd be incredibly difficult. I think the incentive for any team playing Liverpool now is to be spoilers, isn't it? They all want they all want to be the ones that put Liverpool, that end their hopes of a quadruple, don't they? And it's weird on with Newcastle, because I don't really see a rivalry with them, but I certainly think that their fans will want to play spoilers, and they seem to. I think Klopp said it today, didn't he? So I don't quite know what their problem is with us, and I don't really. But I think there's been times in the past where you go up to St James's and they really do seem to enjoy getting one over Liverpool. So I do think tomorrow will be a bit of a slog. But Liverpool have got to do what they did in 2019, which is go there and come what may, come out of it with 3 points. And we've learned about this team that's what they're very good at. They're good at finding players that rise to the occasion. They're good at working hard. They're good at fighting through difficult situations. So, you'd never back against them, but I do think it'll be tough, and I don't think anyone should expect Liverpool to go out and wipe the floor with Newcastle, because I really don't think they'll do that.
Yeah, 9 points off 7th they are with 4 games left. So that does seem like a bit of a stretch to get into Europe.
Come on, Theo. Come on.
Wolves are on beach mode. United are rubbish. West Ham are focusing on Europe.
The thing about Newcastle is that, as Joe kind of alluded to then, is their players will know that they're going to spend £600 billion in the summer, and they'll want to still be there and playing part. And this is like an audition for them to prove that they can still be there after the season. And in John Joe Shelby, he's the captain now, isn't he? I'm sure he was. I saw him. He was captain of a game recently. I think he's the captain.
Because Lascelles doesn't start every week anymore.
Yeah, and Thursday you got a player who used to play for Liverpool and often seems to do quite well against them.
Scored at Anfield, didn't he?
Scored. What did he score for?
Swansea.
He played for Swansea. Did I dream that? He played for Swansea, didn't he?
He scored for Swansea. He scored for Newcastle in the reverse fixture as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so he's somebody who he doesn't mind a shot, and he'll get stuck in. And as we've said, the crowd will be well up for it. So it's going to be an interesting one. And also Newcastle isn't near to my house, which is extremely disappointing.
Yeah, no matter how much money they've got, that's not probably going to change either, I wouldn't imagine. Let's move on to our team selections then, Doyle. Addison in goal. How many changes across the back four?
It was interesting, wasn't it? You had Liverpool were actually resting players in the second half of a Champions League semi-final, weren't they, in that first leg? You could kind of tell where it's not often Trent gets subbed so early, so he's definitely playing. I'd imagine Van Dijk, who I've said before, he's kind of in recent weeks, I think he's been a little bit off his best, looks possibly a tiny little bit tired, and can't remember what game it was recent. Could have been the Everton game. There's some suggestion he might not even be playing. There's some rumour, but obviously that didn't happen. I actually thought he did all right against Villarreal, so he's in. I bring Joel Matip back in, and if Tsimikas is fit, because he has been ill, I would be tempted to play him.
Yeah, I'm playing Tsimikas if he's back to full fitness and, full health, more accurately, isn't it, Joe? Changes for you?
The only change I'd make to the back four, and this is because, as I've said, I think it's going to be a very difficult game, would be Matip. I see why you'd want to play Tsimikas, but I think Klopp said today that he had a bit of an upset stomach, and if you've been ill like that, perhaps it's not the best time to throw someone into what could be a very difficult game. So I think I would stick with Robertson. I think his fight will be required, and other than that, Trent and Van Dijk, they'll probably be looking for set pieces, won't they? So Van Dijk will be important. So I wouldn't put Tsimikas back in though.
You wouldn't have Tsimikas in for his runs down the left.
No,
anyway.
I don't think.
I haven't thought about it. No, I'm not having Tsimikas. That could get a bit messy. Robertson.
Theo, Tsimikas or no?
Tsimikas can play in Villarreal, can't he? That would make sense for him to play there.
I'm having Matip in over Konate as well, and I fancy Joe Gomez at right back for this one. I don't like Van Dijk. I don't think Trent's been at his very best recently. He's been a bit targeted by teams, and he's got loads of players running at him with Newcastle. They're very quick. So, Joe Gomez can be right back. Robertson can keep his place because he's been really in form the last few weeks. So, just the two changes.
Hang on. About Trent, is that, but how many goals the opposition scored? How many chances have they had?
Yeah. But you still give him a rest, then unleash him.
He can rest when he's at the end of the season. He likes to play these games.
He had most of the second half off, didn't he, midweek?
Exactly, yeah.
He had 9 minutes off. What are you on about most?
No, even when he was...
He had about, him, as I said before, he got subbed after about 20 or 15 minutes to go. Was it? It's 20 minutes to go, wasn't it? You can't.
No, it was the 81st minute.
Oh, was it? Oh, well, the old, Anyway, midfield.
Yeah, midfield, Dory. Naby Keita?
Yes. Actually, can you come back to me? Because I'm having to think about that. Do Theo first.
Go on, Theo. Naby Keita?
Naby Keita, Thiago, Jordan Henderson is the 6.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to go for Fabinho and give Thiago a rest in this one, I think, Joe. But could be either way round, I think, for me.
Yeah, I'd go Fabinho, Thiago, Keita. I just don't want to rest Thiago with the form he's in right now.
Dory,
I'm going to go with Fabinho, Thiago, Keita, which is what I was going to say first time round. But what I would say is, if Curtis Jones had been not unwell, I think this might have been a game where he could come in. But I'm not sure whether they'd risk him for that. And
you say this every match at the moment. This could be.
I know, but the thing is that I actually think that Klopp would play him. There's obviously, he just seems to, every now and again, he'll have, the moment he's meant to come in, he has, like, whether it's a little injury or he's not well or somebody else plays unbelievably brilliant that he can't not play them. I think he's been slightly unlucky. Same with Oxlade-Chamberlain. I think he's been really unlucky. I mean, he had an iffy game against Nottingham Forest, but he hasn't played since then, has he? And before that, he'd done all right. So I just think it's an example of the strength in depth. And also, that when it's come to these, even though they're playing every other game, I think the fitness of the players has been pretty incredible. Klopp made mention of that after the first half in Villarreal. Didn't he say at half time? He said to the players, "You all looked incredibly fresh. You had, strong legs and all of that." I also think that came from having had 2 games where they totally dominated and played at home, so didn't have to do much travelling. And then the next 2 games is going to be interesting because, as we say, Newcastle's not close in terms of in England, and not surprisingly, Villarreal is in a different country.
It certainly is. Where are we up to now? I've completely lost where we're up to. Strikers.
I think we're on to the attack where you're going to ask Joe what his attack is.
There you
Do you
go.
want me to take over? I can do this. I used to do this for years.
Jota, Salah, Diaz, yeah. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Really. I mean, you can pick any three of them. Again, be tempted not to drop Mane because he's in such good form, but then I like Diaz at the moment. I never really like to drop Salah, and Jota. I've got a feeling about Jota in this game. I think it sort of suits him. So yeah, that's my three.
Yeah, didn't start midweek, did he, as well? So I'd be going for Jota myself. Theo, Jota for you or Diaz? What's your three?
Salah and Mane keep their places. I reckon Jota does come in, but he doesn't look as comfortable in this front three now. We've got Mane unleashed as this central striker. Like Mane's getting used to that role, and Jota never looks as good on the left. But you've got to manage your legs. You've got to rotate your bodies a bit. And Diaz is the one that you can drop out for a start, throw him on for 30 minutes, he'll terrorise the team, and he'll come and start the next game and be just as good. He's the one that you're not upsetting too much by managing him his minutes a bit more carefully.
Yeah, certainly. Doherty, front three.
I'll just ask Theo, how often do you rotate your body, Theo? I actually think we've now got to the season where none of the players are going to be tired. Not having that. I think they're just going to be, there will be moments we have to sub them and take them off. I just think I play Diaz, Salah and Mane, see how the game's going. And if you need to bring on Jota, I agree with Joe that I don't think Jota's been particularly great lately. I think it's the old thing that he's absolutely brilliant inside the penalty area, but when he's not inside it, he's not anywhere near, because he's a totally different player as Diaz, and Diaz has just been so much better than everyone probably even he expected he was going to be. It's quite difficult to leave him out in the same way that Mane's been much better down the middle than anyone expected him to be as well, and Salah's Salah. So I can't see past those three. I do think this might be a game though where we might see our friend Divock Origi again.
Yeah, if it's tight, wouldn't be a huge surprise to see him come off the bench at some point, particularly with Firmino being out as well. But let's go for match predictions then. I'm going to go 2-1 to Liverpool, I think. Doyle, come to you first. It's going to be a tight one.
I'll have a think about this one. Go to Joe.
Joe, what do you reckon?
1-0 to Liverpool, I'm going to say. Last 20 minutes after lots of frustration.
Divock Origi to score it?
Wouldn't surprise me, like you say, it's funny, isn't it? It's almost like they should just get Origi back on loan for the last 5 games of the season every year, because we've barely seen him in the second half of the season, and then last few games he's popping up and he looks a threat, doesn't he? It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's crazy how sharp he can look when he's not played for 2 months, then suddenly comes in and does that. But Theo, score prediction?
2-0 Liverpool.
2-0. That sounds much more comfortable than the rest of us are expecting. Doherty, 2 goals or 1 goal or no goal?
It's going to go one of 2 ways. I do have a really bad feeling it might finish 1-1. Although, given what I've said earlier, that wouldn't be the worst result in the world. However, I'm going to go 3-2 to Liverpool. I just think it's going to be an absolutely one of those games where the crowd will get into it. The players will feed off the crowd. Liverpool will know that they need to win, so they'll play a bit more attacking than perhaps they normally would do away from home. Newcastle will think we've got a point to prove. I just think it's going to be one of those games. I can't see it being, negative or anything like that. So get your money on a 0-0.
Yeah, well,
Origi's winner off his knee or something. We're doing proper.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be preferably 4-0 to Liverpool with all the goals scored in the first 20 minutes, so we can get our work done and go home.
Yes,
that's going to be what it'll be at Ellen Road, won't it, for City? They'll get a nice 4-0.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a tough game for City because Leeds are suddenly in trouble, even though they got a good point at Palace. So
everything we've said about Liverpool, Newcastle for the last 20 minutes, you can just say for Leeds and City.
Yeah, I do think that while I still expect both of the Liverpool and City to win almost all of their games, I think the goal is going to be a lot closer and a lot harder than people think, because they always are. They always are. Man City will not play Watford at home every single week. You know what I mean? Liverpool won't play Man United every single week. They're like fairly easy games for them this season, but it's not going to be like that. So if you thought it's going to be a stress-free end to the season, as one of our former work experience lads said, what is it he said, Joe? Come on, what did he actually say? So I don't misquote.
Following a team in the title race is stressful. You if you draw a game, it feels like a defeat, so it's no fun. It's plenty of fun, isn't it? Let's face it.
It's great. I mean, let's face it. Look at Everton. They're not having any fun whatsoever. It's stressful for them, but theirs actually is like if Liverpool don't win a game, it's like, oh, we only won the League Cup. But for Everton, it's teams at the bottom. It's far more stressful. So my message, as it was from Jurgen Klopp today, would be to all Liverpool fans listening to this, because I know all of them listen to this podcast, is just enjoy it. And if they don't win a game on Saturday, well, there's a Champions League semi-final on Tuesday, so enjoy that as well. And then they got an FA Cup final, so come on, sort yourselves out.
Yes, absolutely. 8 more games potentially in the space of a month. So intensity, but very much enjoyable as well. But for this podcast, that will just about do us. Plenty more stuff to come across all of the usual channels before and after the Newcastle game, of course. Until next time, though, from all of us here, it's goodbye for now.